Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our webinar. We're going to talk about the opportunities and partnerships in Horizon Europe. I'm Leonardo Tavares. I'm Innovation Manager at ABGI Brazil. And here with me, I'd like to thank Michele and Olivier for joining us in this presentation. And today, we're going to present you the general framework of the Horizon Europe, how to partner search and have call interpretations and good practice on the framework program, and also opportunities for the Latin American and Caribbean countries. Also, we're gonna focus on the Brazilian participation in Horizon Europe, giving some examples of projects and partners in Brazil. At the end, we're gonna have a moment of questions and answers, but feel free to interact with us by the chat, so we can look for some questions that are applicable at any time of the presentation. So ABGI, it's an international group. We are a consultancy present in France, Germany, Ireland, United Kingdom, Canada, United States, and Brazil. And recently, we are operating as well in Poland. And ABGI Brazil, we are part of the French group Visiative, that is a major global player with experience in systems development and digital transformation. And we are the consultant part of this group, specialized in the strategic management of financial resources and tools for innovation and ESG projects. We have more than 16 years of experience in the Brazilian market, working with all of the opportunities for innovative projects. We operate in all the ecosystems in innovation and ESG in Brazil, with a complete view of the application of the legal framework, and also with the opportunities on the management governance process to make organizations more innovative and committed to the sustainable development. Here, it's a glance of the opportunities map for innovation and ESG that we have. If you look on the right upper side of the screen, you're going to see the indirect financial support. That is major tech support for the companies that already innovate and wants to use some of those opportunities to innovate more. And on the lower side, we have other forms of support, not only financially, but with infrastructure and services that the companies can always also use to innovate. And on the left side, we have the direct financial support that we're gonna focus on our webinar today, talking a little bit of international partnerships. Olivier?
Okay, thank you, Leonardo. Just before I start, I would like to be sure that there's no connection problem, because
I can hear you. Yeah.
No, but I mean for the participant, because I can see only one connection, and I want to be sure that, because we received some message that there is some connection problem to the webinar. Donc, is it okay, Barbara? Do you know if there's a problem, or if
I'm
okay?
checking. It's everything okay.
Okay. Good. So thank you for organizing this webinar. It's a pleasure to collaborate with Latin America. So I'm Olivier. So I'm the manager of the grant and subsidies activities in France. And so I will describe the first part of Horizon Europe, and I'm with Michele. Here we will go deeper in the description, and she's a consultant, and she supports our clients daily in the proposal construction in response to Horizon Europe call for proposal. And so we are based in France, as you can see. So I put a few figures about our activity in France. We are 240 people here, more than 1,000 customers, and we are based all around France in 7 agencies for 26 million euro of turnover last year. And I put on the right some key customers which are very well known. And as you can see, we are working in very different areas: mobility, space, health, IT sectors, construction, or energy, with big actors which are put there. But we have also strong activity for SME and public bodies for the grant part of our activity. And we are doing this since more than 20 years. So we support our clients. Next, please. Next slide. With these different phases. First, phase one, we can have a first monitoring of the landscape of funding opportunities for our clients according to their thematics, their fields. And then we can, phase two, go deeper in this analysis and make a review of their projects and find the call for proposal, the funding opportunities that really match their projects. And once the project is identified and once an opportunity, a funding opportunity is identified, then we can go on phase three, which is the support for the construction of the proposal, maturation of projects, and we co-write with our clients the proposal in answering the call for proposal and with the aim to win and obtain the grant. Phase four, once the project is accepted, we can do the project management of the funded project, and also we can work with the clients on the strategy concerning the innovation funding and their strategic mapping of projects and future activities and funding opportunities. And finally, the tax credit phase five, which is very strong in incentives in France, but also in many countries around the world. And so we also provide an overview of these tax credit opportunities, and we build the justification for the tax credit and all the local process. Okay, and next, so now we can present Horizon Europe. Next one, please. So Horizon Europe, it's the main innovation funding program in Europe. It's managed by the European Commission, and it's a very old program, and we are now in the 9th version of this program, and the period of the Horizon Europe program will cover 21 to 27. And as you can see, it has a budget of 95 billion euros. So it's organized in 4 domains, so 3 main pillars, and we will focus our description on pillar 1, which is dedicated to excellent science. Early science with grants dedicated to this type of project very early, and also with grants dedicated to staff exchange, so researcher exchange among participants, and also research infrastructure. And if you click Leonardo, we can see that this pillar budget is 25 billion. It's so a quarter of the total amount for Horizon Europe. Then pillar 2 is dedicated on collaboration. And so it's organized in 6 clusters by thematic, as you can see: health, culture, security and society, digital, industry and space, climate, energy and mobility, food, bioeconomy, etc. And this cluster will publish some call for proposal, and the candidate have to prepare a proposal in answer to this call for proposal. And we will explain to you how to respond to this call for proposal. So this is the main pillar. If you click, we can see the budget. It's more than half of the total budgets, 53 billion euro. It's the two main pillars. Pillar 3, I will not describe it because it's mainly focused for SMEs, for European SMEs, and not really available for Latin America partners. So if you can click just for the information, it's 30 billion euros. So it's a small pillar. And the bottom pillar, the widening participation and strengthening the European research area, we will not describe it because it's also mainly dedicated to European partners. And it's just a very small pillar. It's if you click, I think something like 3 billion euro. Okay, so mainly pillar 1, basic research, and pillar 2, organized by cluster with call for proposal. So this program is really easily available because everything is on the web. So if you click the next slide, you can see the participant portal, which is the website of the Commission, where you can find all the documentation and all the call for proposal. And you can search the interesting call for proposal with keywords on a search engine. So here I just copy paste a screenshot. You have the link for the call for proposal, and we will explain deeper how it works. But the basic information, so next slide, is that it can fund three types of projects, which depends on their budget and the grant funding rate, and on the maturity of the project, so the technology readiness level, which is funded. So the first one is a research and innovation action, RIA, which is 100% granted. So you receive 100% of grant according to your budget in this project. The minimum consortium is composed of 3 partners from 3 different countries, and it focused on TRL 1 to TRL 6, so it should start between these 2 TRL and go and the development presented in the project should go up to TRL 6. And so the activities funded in this program, in this project, is the R&D mainly, but also demonstration or communication. And we will see that the proposal that you have to submit is 45 pages. The next one is innovation action. So there it's more nearing the market. So the TRL are higher than the research and innovation action. So we are on TRL 5 to 8. So more, nearing the market. So you have to present a more detailed business plan in this project. And the private partner are funded 70 or 60%, while the public partner, so the non-profit partner, are still funded 100%. And the proposal page limit is still 45 pages, and in some cases 70 pages. Last type of project, the coordination and support action. It's very specific project. It's not related to R&D, and it funds more networking activities or impact assessment for some commission topics. So I will not really detail this part. Okay, next.
So thank you, Leonardo and Olivier, for this introduction. So now that everyone has the global idea of the Horizon Europe framework, of course, where you all came for today is to know what are actually your opportunities and how do you actually get to these projects, and how do you find the partners if you're currently only on your own with only one idea in your head, but you don't know how to go further. So if you go to the next slide, Leonardo, we can see that, as Olivier already presented, there is the funding and tender portal where you can search by thematic keyword any open calls which might be of interest for you because you search for a certain topic. So in this case, it was forest. If you type the keyword forest, you will find all calls in which you will need to deal with any problems related to forest and how to improve any strategies around this thematic. The funding and tender portal is luckily not the only resource to actually find your opportunities. There is the Latin American and Caribbean countries National Contact Point Network presented in the middle. So just for your information, all the links on the slides are clickable. So once you receive the presentation, you can go to the different websites. And this network of contact points, they can provide advice on ongoing calls, on any partners looking for other partners in certain thematics, and they will also present the different opportunities which are currently open or which will soon open on the platform. In addition, the Euraccess platform for Latin American countries is up to date about the different calls which are of particular interest for Latin American and Caribbean countries. And they will also provide a space to publish any job offers. So if, for example, at the first time you are not necessarily looking for creating new projects, but just being involved in a European project, you can find the job offers on this platform as well. And last but not least, there is the Enrich Network, which is a network dedicated to improve knowledge on Horizon Europe program and different projects to the Latin American and Caribbean countries. On their website, they will publish the different calls which are still open, also the calls which are forthcoming. And in addition, they provide support for innovative players in the different fields. And most interestingly, this network also provides a matchmaking platform, as you can see on the right below, which will be the first step towards finding your new partners. Next slide, please. So besides the Enrich matchmaking platform, there are many other tools to find your new partners. And just a small hint on the Horizon Europe National Contact Point portal, there is also a guide for partner search, which I strongly recommend you to read while starting preparing your project. So besides this guide and the already mentioned Enrich matchmaking platform, there is the European Commission Partner Search Tool. While clicking on the link, you can provide any thematic keywords. If you already have a slight idea of the calls you are interested in, you can also fine-tune on different type of calls and then find the people who are interested in applying to these calls as well. What's very important is that this partner search tool also gives you the opportunity to publish actually your own search for partners. So you need to describe who you are, what are your key competencies, what type of project are you interested in, and then mention that you are looking for new partners or looking to join a consortium. Similarly, on the Euraccess platform, there is the search for collaboration tool. And in this tool, you can also either directly search for people who are looking to integrate new people in their consortium or propose your own search for partners. In addition, we already mentioned the funding and tenders portal, so shortly mentioned as FNT portal. Once you have selected the call because you already knew the topic you wanted to apply to, you already have a part of your consortium, but you're not sure to make it, or you're not yet eligible to actually apply for the call. Per call, there is one tab on the left-hand side of the call, which indicates partner search. And here again, you can either mention that you are looking to join a consortium and just mention your competencies, or you can give an advertisement on what type of partners you're still looking for to complete your consortium. On top of that, and mainly of interest for companies, there is the European Enterprise Network, who also proposes a partner search tool. And here you can actually define if you're looking for a partner to collaborate and to do research together, or that you're rather looking for a partner to buy from, to sell to, or to work together with on a different level. So you can also really fine-tune your search for partners. And this will mainly give you SMEs, so small, medium enterprises in Europe. But of course, you can also publish yourself here as available partner. And to be more specific, we always make use of the National Contact Point Network. So for each cluster in the Pillar 2, which was presented by Olivier, there is particular National Contact Point Networks who have the latest news on the calls which are open and upcoming, on the people who are looking for new partnerships. And in general, you can get in touch with them, discuss your ideas, and they can eventually send out an email to their network telling that, okay, you are looking for a partner and you have this and this key competencies. So altogether, there are many tools available. So these are the most important ones. Of course, there's also the use of your own network. The use of a friend of a friend of a friend is always interesting, as you might get contact with people you already know and you already like, which makes it always easier to have a successful consortium. So next slide, please. Now that we have defined what are our opportunities and how to actually get our partners, that's all nice and interesting, but actually we don't know yet how to understand the different calls. So here I will first give you an overview of the calls which are specifically available for Latin American and Caribbean countries. So once again, there is already a spreadsheet available with the open calls for 2023 and 2024. However, you need to keep in mind that this is a list of all calls for which you are eligible to apply, but not necessarily eligible for funding. So the ones which are presented on the slide are the ones where you are actually eligible for funding as well. So in the first pillar, we have different type of calls. One is the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, and the other one is the European Research Council mobility grants. So both of them are mainly focusing on doctoral students and postdoctoral researchers to exchange and to be mobile within Europe and outside Europe. They are either for individual researchers or for groups of institutions. So the main calls which are currently still open in the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, MSCA in short, are the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships. So what does this mean? An MSCA postdoctoral fellowship is a postdoctoral researcher who will learn a new technique, different approaches, complementary to the ones he's already learning in his home institution. And he will go to a different country to actually learn these new techniques and then integrate them back in his home institution. This can also be a researcher who is planning to move to Europe from outside Europe. So this might be mainly interesting for the Latin American and Caribbean countries. As a postdoctoral researcher, you can apply for a project together with a PI in Europe and mention the project you are willing to set up together and find the funding to actually get to Europe and do your project. In addition, on an individual level, there's also the ERC grants. So they can be a starting, consolidator, or synergy grants, where the starting grants are mainly for young researchers who are willing to set up a new lab and a new team, but they do need more funding to actually buy the equipment necessary and to be able to recruit their team. While consolidator grants are for more senior researchers who have shown that they were very successful in their field and that they are ready to grow, that they want to extend their team and also buy more advanced equipment. And then last but not least is the ERC synergy grants. So it's individual entities who show that together they are actually even better. So here the excellence of science is of slightly less importance. It's mainly to showing that there's a complementarity within the collaboration. So for all these calls, Latin American and Caribbean countries, individual researchers are eligible for funding. Then on a collaborative level, still in the MSCA, there are the doctoral networks, staff exchanges, co-fund programs, but I will get to that later on, and the transnational cooperation among MSCA national contact points. So first of all, for the doctoral networks, this is a call where you will provide a consortium who will all provide different PhD projects. And the PhD students who can be recruited cannot be in the same country for the last for the last 3 years for more than 12 months. So, for example, students who just finished their master in, let's say, Brazil, they can apply to actually join these type of projects. In addition, we can also have LAC universities being associated partners in this project. So unfortunately for the doctoral networks, the funding depends on whether or not the coordinator wants to give the overheads to these LAC partners. However, for the staff exchange program, there are way more opportunities, as this is a program where staff needs to exchange. This can be on any level, so it can be a PhD student, a postdoc, a PI, administrative support, if it's really relevant for setting up, for example, new joint programs. And in the doctoral networks, the salary of the PhD student is funded by the European Commission. In staff exchanges, it's really the mobility itself which is funded. So your trip and your housing while being overseas. The idea is always to really exchange knowledge to make sure that we align our practices and that we share good practices amongst each other. The CoFund program, you are not eligible for funding, but you can be an associated partner and learn from the doctoral programs which are being set up under this call. The idea is really to learn how to guide a doctoral program, how to recruit properly your next PhD students, and once again share knowledge and gain competencies in the different fields. If you're interested, you can provide internships to the students who are included in these programs. And in that case, once again, you need to discuss with the coordinator whether he is willing to provide you some funding for these for holding these internships. And then the last point is really the transnational cooperation with very small envelopes. So I won't go into more detail. The most interesting pillar is really pillar 2 with the different clusters. And we need to keep in mind that actually there is a list of third countries, so-called third country participations, which means that countries from low and middle income can actually apply to these calls, can be a part of the consortium and are eligible for funding. So, for example, in the low and middle income countries from LAC countries, it's Argentina, Bolivia, Cuba, Guatemala, Paraguay, Peru, and there's many more. So on the top, on the bottom of this slide, you can see the PDF in which all these countries are mentioned. In addition, there is also a guide in Spanish to facilitate actually the preparation for these calls of proposals, which is provided by the National Contact Point Network of the LAC. Importantly, for different calls, sometimes it's specifically indicated that there is funding available for Latin American and Caribbean countries. So the 3 calls you see on the slide, they are mainly focusing on space, bilateral cooperation, and research and innovation cooperation, where it's specifically mentioned that Latin American countries, or in the last case, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, are eligible for funding. So this document, it has over 170 calls currently in its list, and this list will get longer and longer with the years growing as we are looking more and more for international collaboration. And to help, next slide, please. To help facilitating this collaboration, there's actually many agreements and arrangements being set up. So, for example, in Brazil, there's the administrative arrangement for Horizon Europe, where in some cases, actually, the CONFAB is providing co-finances for the calls you apply to with European networks. In addition, there is the implementing arrangement for the European Research Council. So these are the ERC grants I just mentioned before, and many other arrangements which facilitate the collaboration between scientists, but also between policymakers, and actually to align our strategies and get to a better and more healthy world as soon as possible. For other countries, for example, for Mexico, there is the National Contact Point website, which is dedicated to ongoing policy discussions. And for all the other LAC countries, you can discuss with the National Contact Point. So the website of the LAC National Contact Points will give you directly the person, the email, and the phone number of the person to contact to know more about your possibilities for implication in Horizon Europe. So now that we know that you can actually join the Horizon Europe program, how do we start? Leonardo, next slide, please. So we defined our call. We know approximately what partners we want to include, and we know approximately what topic we want to discuss. So before starting your proposal writing, you really need to keep in mind that the Horizon Europe Framework Program is really a strategic plan of the European Commission, which means that, as shown on the bottom of the slide, we start from the European Union policy priorities, which will make sure to define key strategic orientations. There are 4 of them, and it will define the impact areas. Based on these decisions and mainly the key strategic orientation, the European Commission decided on what kind of expected impacts they want to have in the upcoming years. And based on these expected impacts, the work program has been created. So the work program is the overall name of the different calls for project which are available. So within the work program, there are different destinations. So this might seem a bit fake to you right now. So Leonardo, if you go to the next slide, I will give you a more practical detail. So you can click multiple times so that all the text appears. Thank you. So this is a specific example of a call text. So on the top left, we can see the budget which is available for the call. We can also see the name of the call and what is the deadline. So thanks to this information, we know how much time we still have left before we need to submit the proposal. Then we go to the topic description, and in the topic description, usually they describe the expected outcomes. So these are results we need to work towards to. And then in the destination description, so the one I mentioned before, we actually find back the key strategic orientation. So they can be KSO A, B, C, or D, which are mainly focusing on European sovereignty, but also more collaboration and strengthened international partnerships. And in the destination, we usually find the expected impact. And if you go click once more, there's also the list of documents. So this is really where you start preparing your proposal. Get to know when do you need to submit, what are the expectations of the European Commission, and which documents are of importance. So for the call documents, this is to have your template for preparing your proposal. And then the additional documents, they usually describe the general idea behind the work program, some specific expectations, some roadmaps which are already existing, and also the main thematics which you need to deal with. And which is of interest is also that usually there's an evaluation form. So if you click once more, you can see that thanks to this call text, you know the expectations, you have access to all the necessary documents. You can make sure that you will submit your proposal in time, and you can use this evaluation form to make sure that your project has the right focus and that you really answer to the evaluator's needs, because a satisfied evaluator means a funded project. So if you go to the next slide, now that we know what is expected, we need to make sure that we are actually eligible. So first of all, the eligibility criteria are to have at least 3 legal entities, which are from EU member state or Horizon Europe associated countries. So these are countries we have an agreement with Horizon Europe. But mainly it's the European Union, those countries who are available. But of course, it doesn't mean that you're not eligible. You can always join in the consortium. You just need to make sure that you have at least 3 European countries in your consortium. And they must be independent of each other. Then just a small detail, and I will get back to that later as well. For the proposal, it will be selected on 3 different criteria, which are the 3 subchapters of the proposal: on excellence, on impact, and on implementation, with a minimum score of 3 out of 5 for each section and a minimum score of 10 out of 15 on the total of the proposal. In general, we see that for mainly health cluster and industry cluster, you need to have a score of at least 12 or 13 to be eligible for funding, as there are many excellent proposals. Okay, so we prepared our consortium. We prepared our call text. We know what is expected, and we made sure that we are actually eligible. So what's next, Leonardo? You need to define, so you can click a couple times. You need to define the different parts of the proposal. So first of all, there is an administrative part to be filled in. In the administrative part, you will describe the abstract. So you will do this at the very end of your project preparation. Give the keywords of your proposal, its duration, your administrative registration number, the contact person, and short descriptions of the different partners. There's also an ethics questionnaire, and of course, we need to provide a budget. Next, please. Then the second part, the most important part, is actually the proposal description. So this is called part B, which consists of the 3 different sections: excellence, impact, and implementation. And dependent on the call is either 45 pages in the case of the RIA actions, or 70 pages in general for the IA, so innovation actions. Then within each section, there are different subsections. So in the excellence part, we have the objectives and ambition and your methodology. In the impact, your pathway towards impact and how you're going to disseminate, exploit, and communicate about your results, and a summary of this impact pathway. And last but not least, the implementation section, where you will really describe the work to be done in the project and the capacity of the participants to actually reach the work which is expected. So this will be a Word document you will be preparing together with us or on your own. Next, please. And eventually this will be a PDF, which together with the part A needs to be uploaded on the proposal platform. So next, please. Yes. So to get into a bit more detail of the proposal template, on the left-hand side, you can see the different sections and the subsections and the sub-subsections. And on the right-hand side, the evaluation criteria. What is of main importance is that you describe clear, measurable, realistic, and achievable objectives, the so-called SMART objectives, that your work is really ambitious and goes beyond the state of the art, that you have groundbreaking research and innovation, novel concept and approaches, and that your maturity is in line with the topic. So often in the call text, we will also see expected TRL, beginning of project 2, end of project 4 for RIA, for example. So you really need to be in line with these expectations. In the methodology, you need to make sure that everyone understands what you will be doing in your work. So you can be specific, but it needs to be understandable for any kind of evaluator. And what is often overlooked, but is very important in the European framework, is the non-technical elements, where you describe your actions for open science, how to assure gender balance, how to manage your data, and also how you're integrating social science and humanities. So, for example, law, communication, history, ethics, philosophy, etc. Next slide, please. In the impact section, we need to describe the project's pathway towards impact. So here you need to get back to the KSO, which we mentioned before, and also to the expected impacts mentioned in the call text. Your pathway needs to be credible, and you need to be aware of the potential barriers and how are you going to deal with these barriers, and describe the scale and significance of your project. So for the scale and significance, you can think about a market study. If you're a company in the health, maybe the number of patients you will be curing. They should be as precise as possible, and of course show that you're not just dealing with 0.0001% of population or impact, but really having a massive impact. Besides doing practical work, which has a lot of impact, you also need to be able to communicate about your work. So this is both on a scientific level and on the lay public level. So dissemination is really going to conferences, writing publications, and communicating with your peers, while communication is really towards the larger public. Are you present at science events? Are you writing blogs? Are you making videos to make science more fun, etc.? And especially for the innovation actions, what is your exploitation strategy? So how are you going to use the results after the project? Because it's nice to get a project funded, but of course it needs to have a long-term effect as well. And then you will give a summary of these different impact sections, and not forgetting to describe your IP rights. Next slide, please. So then the main work is actually described in the third section. So this is the implementation section, where we describe a work plan and your resources. So the work plan is actually different groups of work you will be matching in different work packages. And in each work package, you have different tasks. And all together, this will make sure that you reach the objectives you mentioned in the first section. And it will lead to the impact you mentioned in the second section. So it's always important to keep coherence between the different sections. In this implementation section, you also need to describe the capacity of the participants. So what are your key competences? How are you going to use them? How are you going to make sure that you're really complementary with the other partners? And how is each and everyone benefit from the other one? If you then go to the next slide, You also need to keep in mind while preparing your work plan, what is actually the timeline of evaluation. So often we want to start a project as soon as possible, but you need to keep in mind once your project is submitted, it takes a couple months to get to the consortium agreement. To actually have the evaluation of your project, the negotiation, if necessary, with the European Commission. And the grant agreement is usually only signed after 5 months after submission. And the start of the project is usually about 8 months after submission. So you need to keep in mind while preparing a proposal that you don't need the funding right away, but that this is something which will arrive later on, and that your costs are only eligible from the moment the project has been submitted. So next slide, please. So how do you define now your project? So here we will only quickly give you some tools, and this will also show you how we can be of help. So myself and the other consultants here in France and also in Brazil, we have the expertise in writing proposals and advising you on how to show your impact on different levels and to different type of publics. So one tool for defining a coherent work plan is making use of a team alignment map, in which you will define your joint objectives, your joint commitments, your joint resources, and the joint risks. How are you going to make it work? So usually you want to work towards one common goal. Who can commit to what type of work, who has what type of researches, both human speaking and technically speaking, and what are the risks of your project, and how can one partner maybe elevate the risk of another partner. So we will of course be behind you when you're preparing this work, and make sure that the work packages are actually in line with the objectives, with the capabilities of the consortium members, and also with the expectations of the call. So to define a coherent work plan, you need to define groups of work and how they interact with each other. In general, for very technical projects, we see a first work package on requirements, and then more technical work packages on design, optimization, operation, and the last work package on testing and validation, keeping in mind that we always need to have the dissemination, communication, exploitation, and the management work package to make sure that the project runs smoothly once it has been financed. Another important detail to verifying that your project is actually coherent and easy to understand and answering to all the expectations is to verify that you cover the whole value chain. So from the technology development to integration and testing to the final product to the end users, and if possible also actors within regulation and standards entities. So basically, thanks to these tools, you can verify if your project makes sense. Of course, you then need to show it to someone else as well. And this is also one of our actions, is to then actually reread your proposal and see if it makes sense to us, because if it doesn't make sense to us, it won't make sense to the evaluator and it won't get funded. So this is only on the implementation part. Next slide, please. Of course, we also need to define the impact, and this is usually more complicated. But if we break it down, it's actually very easy. We first start with the input. So what is necessary for the project implementation? So this is your previous results, your patents, your expertise. Then what will be done during the project? So this is the work plan we just mentioned. And then what are actually the main results of this project? So what are the outputs? And usually we mention key exploitable results, because we can have many different type of outputs, but only a few of them are really exploitable. And these outputs, how can they actually be used? So this is where we are in the outcome. And here, this is the part of the call text where we mentioned expected outcomes. So we need to make sure that our input activities and output will lead to the expected outcomes and more if possible. And then on top of that, once we have defined all these different elements, we need to show what is actually the impact. So what are the consequences of the use of the project results? And here we also go back to the call text where it was mentioned expected impacts. For example, if we go to Green Deal project, this is about we need to reduce the CO2 emission with 50% in this industry. Or we need to produce at least 100 megaton of hydrogen in the next 5 years. So easily you can say, okay, thanks to our development, we will reach these objectives, and give the proof why you believe this is possible. And then mention that, okay, by reducing greenhouse gases and by producing hydrogens, we have a good carbon footprint and we have a good impact on environment. However, it's not only the environment which counts. You also need to think about social impact, technological impact, and economical impact for yourself, for the consortium, and for the society at large. So this is quite a lot of work. But there's still more to be done, because now we only have like the baselines and we answer to the expectations. But just answering to the expectation makes your project actually a standard project, and it doesn't get the attention it needs. So to improve, next slide, please. We do some additional work, or together with you, which means that we use additional tools to complete the non-technical elements. Because if the science is already great, if your consortium is great, it's really the small details which counts. So this means that you need to be aware of the different roadmaps which exist in your topic, in your field, to verify with industry association website if there's any ongoing competition calls, actions in which you need to subscribe to make sure that your project will really have the impact it needs. And of course, to know the statistics. It's nowadays very important to really know what has already been going on, what do we still need, and how can we actually reach these goals. So while doing all this research, while performing the verification of the call text, of the different strategies, you will create a winning proposal. And Leonardo will show us that actually this has already been the case for Brazil.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Michael, for this detailed explanation. Before we move ahead, I have some questioning that I'd like to address to you. For the MSCA on Pillar 1, the researchers can have some bond with companies or only universities. Can you explain a little bit about it?
Mm-hmm. So in general, it's actually very appreciated if you have a researcher who has both links with industry and with academia, because this will strengthen the link between academia and industry. So I'm not sure to have well understood the question. If you mean that one researcher is linked to both, how should we deal with that? Is that the question, or is it rather on what kind of interactions are needed?
Yes, if the researcher it's like contract by a company, he's applicable. He or she it's applicable for the MSCA.
Yeah, so for the MSCA doctoral network, as long as you don't have your doctoral diploma yet or have not been subscribed to a PhD program, you're eligible to apply for other projects. If you are the researcher organizing the doctoral network, it just depends on the administration. It depends who is paying your salary. The one who pays your salary is the one who will carry the project.
Oh, okay, great. And we know there's levels of the participants on the consortia, right? So we can have the coordinator, the actual participant or partners. Can you explain a little bit the difference of these levels on the project? And who is responsible for the submission process? How does it work?
Okay, so to start with the end, and for the responsibility of the submission process in general is the coordinator. But if, for example, you're accompanied by us, you can also discuss with us, and then the consultant will be in charge of submitting the project. So this is really a mutual agreement between the researchers and the consultant. If you're on your own creating a consortium, you just need to make sure you dedicate one person who will click on the button, because everyone else will have access to your project, which will be created on the European platform. So then on the levels within a consortium, indeed, there is the coordinator. And then we usually have a management team, which can be either within the institute of the coordinator or together with other partners, if this is of interest for the project, especially for CSA actions. It's very useful to show that there is a joint governance. So you really need to already start thinking at the proposal stage about the governance of your project. Then for the type of partners within a project, this can either be a beneficiary. So this is the one who will sign the consortium and the grant agreement, who will receive the funding, and who is really actively involved in the project. Then we have affiliated partners. So these are partners which are related to the beneficiaries on a legal level. So for example, in France, we have universities which are also related to a global institution. And then the university can be the one who is actually carrying the project, but you need to mention that you have a legal link to this overall organization. And then there's the associated partners. So the associated partners are those who are involved in the project, but they don't sign the grant agreement, they don't get funding, but they are involved either as an advisory board or for some small tasks, or they are a provider. Of information and knowledge, or for some cases, if we are using a feedstock, then they are the providers of the feedstock. So those can be associated partners. And then there is also the partners which we don't see on the platform, but usually we advise people to create an advisory board, both scientific and exploitation-wise. So it can be on two levels: a scientific advisory board for where should the project go, and an exploitation board, which is rather focusing, okay, after that we finished all the work, how should we go further and make sure that we have the biggest impact and that we reach the right people.
Great, thank you. So moving forward, we have a myth that Brazilian entities cannot participate on the framework programs in Europe. But if we take a glance on the Cordis database, we can see a lot of projects that have Brazilian entities participation. So on the top of the slide, we're going to see from 2007 on the right side to 2023, we have a lot of entities participating. And on the bottom side of the slide, we can see the for-profit entities participation. So in the top, we're going to see universities, you're going to see public entities, and for-profit entities participation. And on the bottom side, we're going to see the for-profit, so companies that already participated in the European Framework Program. So here in 2022, we have the participation of 4 projects with Brazilian entities participating on projects of Horizon Europe. And the main areas of participation of Brazilian entities are in sustainable economy, climate changes, biofuels, ecosystems, aircrafts. So this is the mainly themes that the Brazilian entities are participating in the Horizon Framework Program since the FP7, since the Framework Program number 7. So these are the mainly things that we saw Brazilian entities with research collaborating with researchers in Europe. And here we have some participation cases. The first one is by Embrapa. They are actually working on this call, the operationalization, the International Research Cooperation on Carbon. So they are participating as a partner of this consortium. So they are probably not assigned and grant contract with the consortium. And we have also CAIMA Brasil Sementes in the MIDAS program, the utilization of marginal lands for growing sustainable crops. So we see both of entities working on circular economy or green themed projects. And last, we have the Embraer. They are participating in the Haiku project. aimed to research AI in the aircraft safety. And we have talked to some of Embraer researchers, and I'd like to thank Leonardo Garnica, Juliano Mendonça, and Ricardo Reis for sharing their information with us, their point of view on the participation of Horizon framework programs. And they are participating since the FP6. So there's a long time that Embraer is participating on the framework program. And at first, they were invited to participate in a consortium in FP6, and since then they they started to look for more proactive for new partners. So they first understand the how the framework program works, and then after that they started to look for some of technologies that are complementary for their strategy, and also infrastructure that they can find in Brazil. So the importance of the Brazilian entities participation, it's more than a get of funding, but to get some complementary technologies and infrastructure to collaborate on the innovative projects that we have in Brazil. So that's it. That we have the presentation for today. So let me see if we have more questions on our chat. Fernando Berlink, he said that finding a mining sector partner, it's very hard. Do you have some tip for him to search a partner in the portals?
So I didn't hear well which thematic he was in.
In the mining sector.
In the mining sector.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, of course, it's with the search of keyword, and definitely get in touch with the national contact points, because they usually have the main information on where to find other partners, especially to the clusters related to this industry. So it would be mainly cluster 4, I would say. And otherwise, what is usually useful as well is just going to Google and find actually top players, key players in the mining field. If you have a specific technology you want to search for, really go into more detail, go to ResearchGate, go to conferences, talk with your peers. Do they know anyone? Really use your network to find other partners. If there is the possibility nowadays, even though this is something we need to be very careful with, there is also AI which can help us in our research. So by asking the right questions to this AI, they can also give you the key players in the different fields. And maybe Olivier can complete.
Yes, well, in addition, I think there is an interesting project to find a partner in the mining sector. It's Mine the Gap project. It's a H2020 project, which was previously funded. I can put it in the chat, the link for the project, and it gather, I think, a lot of partner in this thematic. So,
and I think to have like the results of the project in mind to search for a partner, right? So not only search for the mining sector, but also circular economy or the impact that he expects with that project, right?
Also, indeed, if the technology is something which can be elaborated to other fields, this is something very important to keep in mind, yes.
Great. And I have another question from Claudio Lima. He asked that if we can indicate what calls are more indicated to companies. There's some calls that are more directly to companies, like an IA call, or companies can participate in all those calls.
So in general, the cluster, the pillar 1 calls, so Marie Curie and ERC, are rather academic, with only involvement of industry to create a stronger link. But if we look at pillar 2 and the different clusters, there's where we see many more industrial partners.
Great. I think that's it. We jump up to our time. I'd like to thank you so much for your time, for your collaboration, and the explanation was really helpful. And if you have some other questions, if you need some support or assistance, we from ABGI are available. So you can contact us at our portals or by LinkedIn. Okay, thank you so much for your time. And just one additional information, we're going to share this presentation with the subscribed participants. So you're going to have the links for you. Okay, thank you and bye for all.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.